Well, here we are. It is Thursday, January 26, 2023, and today we're going to take a look at the Cohen & Cohen auction. That was the Chinese export dealer who had a large number of items were put in a single owner sale at Bonham's. How did it do? It did very well. And we're going to get to that in a minute. And last week, before we do that, I had mentioned last week about the dynamic of the pricing and the values of American furniture and English furniture that traditionally would be accompanied by, as accent pieces and accessories, China trade items. And when the American and English furniture market fell off a bit back in the late 1990s, the early 2000s, it fell off quite a bit in many places. Appraisals had to be rewritten. Values had gone down because of a lack of interest in a lot by the next generation. And I've been wondering for a while, when is that market going to start to come back? Well, I think it started. The sales at Sotheby's, Christie's, and Bonham's are bellwethers for where the market is going. And a couple of things that I noticed that were sort of interesting. And you have to keep in mind, too, that when you have pieces coming in, these high-end Americana pieces, objects like these, that back in the 90s were worth huge amounts of money, crazy amounts of money. It was the time when we saw the Nichols Brown secretary desk sell for $12 million, and the Appleton desk sold for $8 million, and Newport Blockfront chests were routinely selling for between 1.5 and 5 million. Those days are over. The market got significantly overheated, and a large number of the dealers who made that market, they were market makers, have died, or they've gone into other areas of art and antiques. So that market sort of dwindled. Basically, it dwindled down, and the Americana department at Sotheby's was trimmed back considerably. Same with Christie's; it was one of their big departments. And today, like the sale that took place, the Americana sale at Sotheby's grossed a couple of $1 million. When back in the day, they'd have one piece that would gross 5-10 million, and the auctions would bring in 20, 30, 40 million. And now they're down to a fraction of that. But the good news is you are starting to see signs of life on on some of the less expensive pieces. Some of the more expensive pieces did pretty well, but things under 20,000, things that were priced reasonably, consigners that weren't looking at their appraisals from 1990 and saying, "Wow, it was worth $400,000 in 1990. Why can't I get $250,000 for it today, or what I paid for it at least?" And you can't. That's done. And when you look at the results here, you'll see some things that didn't sell, like this very fine, important Chippendale mahogany serpentine front games table. It was estimated at $100,000 to $200,000. And back in the 90s, it would have sold easily for that. It didn't find a buyer this time around. But then you look at other things that are in the lesser brackets, and I mean lesser, under $20,000, under $10,000. You saw quite a bit of activity, which bodes well, because these are people, I think this is a sign that people maybe are tiptoeing back into the market a bit. You have some new buyers, they're going to try it out, people that have some resources, they're successful, their kids are grown, and they're looking for nice things to put in their houses. And when you look through this sale, you see things estimated at 20 to 30,000 sold, see things at 50 to 70,000 didn't sell. And those heavy competitors have not been regenerated, so to speak. They're sort of out of the market. They're not paying attention right now, and then they'll be back. They'll be back at some point, but for now, that's what you've got. And in the general sale, the important Americana sale, and they had a number of things from old collections that weren't necessarily bought in the 90s at the top of the market, but the family most certainly will have appraisals going back to that period with sky-high prices on it. And the market told them what their stuff is worth now or what it's not worth. All right, and that was sort of the result in this sale. But one of the auctions that they had that was very interesting was the collection of Joseph Kindig. And Joseph Kindig, a lot of you will know this name. Joseph Kindig III. He was a dealer for actually he was a next generation dealer from the Kindig family in Pennsylvania. And they had settled in Pennsylvania. The Kindigs settled in Pennsylvania around 1705. They were farmers. They were very prosperous. And in the 19th century, they owned a very successful farm in Pennsylvania. And in the second half of the 19th century, it's interesting, they went into horse brokerage, livestock, and brokering horses for carriages and transportation. And in the turn of the century, when the automobile came along, demand for horses fell off considerably, and they started to buy furniture. And they started to buy antique chests and blanket chests and things like that, and to buy and sell them to make money. And they became very scholarly, and that was Joseph Kindig Jr., I think. The father was the farmer, then Joseph Kindig Jr., and then Joseph Kindig III came along. He was born in 1923, and he just died. He died in 2021. He was, 98, 99 years old. He was a fixture in the industry. When I ran auctions, we used to hear from the Kindigs. He was a very quiet man, a total gentleman, fantastically knowledgeable. And he was known for that. He was known for being highly academic. He was also known for being very expensive. But he had fabulous research on pretty much everything he sold, and he was an expert on American furniture, accessories, silver, weapons, flintlock guns and powder horns, and a little bit of everything. He was a true Renaissance dealer. He handled everything. And he handled only the best most of the time. That was really what he handled. And when the family apparently decided to sell his collection, they, as dealers, as multi-generational dealers, they knew the market is not what it was 20, 30 years ago, and they wanted the stuff to sell. They put reasonable estimates on things. And that, coupled with his reputation, with the Kindig reputation, this sale did absolutely great. It didn't have 100% sold, but it looks like it was 80 or 90% sold, and some of the prices were extremely strong or well over estimate. But when you go through this, you're struck by the difference in estimates between this and the Americana sale. Here they put, if you understand the furniture, you'll recognize that they went with easier on the estimates, which means they're easier on the reserves, and that encouraged participation when you couple it with the history of the family. So it's a really interesting dynamic at work here. And you see all these very wonderful 18th and 19th century objects. Most of what they sold were 18th. He handled an awful lot of 18th century furniture and decorative accessories. You see firebacks in here, which have not been been big sellers in the last few years. They sold them for one of them sold for over $1,000, and they had pieces of furniture that brought very, very strong money. There was a table here, a George II English mahogany side table with a marble top, estimated at $2,000 to $3,000, sold for $20,000. That's a good sign. You had this very nice little Queen Anne walnut dressing table, Boston, with a $5,000 to $8,000 estimate. It sold for $3,700, which tells you right away that they didn't push hard estimates and hard reserves. They wanted the stuff to sell, and you saw other items also sell for just under the estimate, within the estimate, or above the estimate. So overall, I think an indicator of where the market is right now is that there's a lot of growing interest on the things, the lower tiered items with good provenance. Provenance is such an important thing, and rarity. And there was a lot of interest in this stuff. There's this very, very fine James Reed Chippendale figured mahogany dressing table, for example, circa 1770, estimated at $25,000 to $35,000, sold for $31,000. This little games table, estimated at $25,000 to $35,000, sold for $27,000, and on and on and on. And then the people who are interested in antique firearms and powder horns and all that, they came and spent money here. You have horns that sold for $3,000, $8,000, $5,000, and so forth. More firebacks. This fireback was a very rare one by Jonathan Robertson of the Oxford Furnace outfit in New Jersey. It was estimated at 6 to 8, sold for $22,000. It has a heraldic 2 lions rampant on it, and so forth. So this I'm just pointing all this out to give you a sense of where the rest of the market is for the people that buy China trade. They also buy these, and there wasn't a lot of China trade in this sale. All right, but there were a couple of pieces. A punch bowl was in the sale, and a few other things. Mr. Kindig wasn't a big Chinese export buyer. He did buy it. He did buy things like that, but it wasn't a primary focus of his. His focus was really on English and American silver furniture, accessories, mirrors, this sort of thing. All the accoutrements that you'd buy to furnish your house. And overall, I think they did very, very well, which is a good sign. And the Christie's, this is the Christie's American sale, and it's important to know this stuff because this is going to will give you an indication of where the values and interest in China trade is going. And the Christie's sale did pretty well, actually. The Christie's sale also did well. Christie's, I think, really encouraged their sellers to keep the estimates down, keep the reserves low, if you really want to sell it. Otherwise, don't waste your time, don't waste Christie's time, and do it this way. But again, when you got into things that were estimated at 200,000 to 300,000, didn't sell. When you looked at things that were estimated at 25,000 to 40,000, this one sold for 126,000, did fine. All right, and they probably knew it would do that, but they put a low estimate and low reserve on it to encourage competition. The same thing with the wing chair here. These Philadelphia wing chairs used to sell for over $150,000 routinely. This time around, it sold for $32,000, and so forth. And on and on and on. So that's sort of where it's going, and I think it's pretty encouraging if you have an interest in American furniture, or European furniture, English furniture, decorative art, because I think as I mentioned in the video on interior decorating a few weeks ago, I think there is a growing interest by people that have some money to furnish their houses with more than just sort of the static art modern tripe that the decorators throw at them with their neutral interiors and brand name catalog ordered things to keep in your house for couches and tables and chests and so forth. I think this sort of material is suddenly going to seem a lot more appealing to people that can afford it, people that have the money, and they're going to say, I want to own something that's historic. I want to own a great Rhode Island chest or a great New York table. And there is stuff available in the market, and I got a feeling that you're going to see in the next. It's going to be a while. It's going to take. It's going to be. It took a long time for the Americana market to get up to full steam. Back in the 1950s, the famous block front desk that ended up selling for in the millions in the 80s and 90s. You could buy them in the 1950s for under $5,000. $6,000. I had a friend of mine's grandmother sold Israel Sack and Company a block front desk in around 1954, and they got $4,400 for it. And at the time, that was considered an astronomical amount of money. In 1968, Federal Sofa sold in this area through my old business partner's father for about $58,000. That actually put it on the front page of the New York Times for $58,000 for Federal Furniture. And that sofas of that type that sold later ended up selling in the 90s were selling for 6 times that amount. So it took a while for the prices to really hit a peak, and it's going to take a while for them to cycle back and hit a peak again. But I think it's going to happen. It always happens. During the 1930s and so forth, you could buy a Queen Anne armchair for not much more than the price of sandwich glass. And today, a great Queen Anne armchair is still worth significant amounts of money, $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 for a great one. So it's coming. All right. So I just wanted to start with that. And let's take a look and see how everything went over at Bonham's. This is the Cohen & Cohen sale. I did a video on this just because it was such a very fine collection that they were putting up. And Cohen & Cohen has been around. They're longtime dealers. They've been in business for 50 years. They rank very highly with all the other name brand dealers, so to speak. Marchant, Chait Gallery, Eskenazi, Cohen & Cohen. There's a bunch of them. I can't name them all. There's some very, very good dealers. And they were particularly well known for their great research and studious approach that they took to everything they sold. And this was the sale. And when you look through it, it looks like it's about 95% sold maybe, and for good prices. So let's get into it. All right, you had this, a pair of early Chinlung lidded jars, Famille Rose, around 17, I think it was like 1740, just barely into the beginning of the Chinlung period. The pair ended up selling for $25,500. These are beautiful jars. They were 26 inches tall, wonderful quality, and you can come over here and blow it up and really get a look at it. You'll notice immediately the enamels are all in nice condition, all the way up. Good crisp colors, nice white bodies on it, beautifully done. Look at the gilded flower is completely intact. There's no wear to it. Very fine, and that's sort of the theme for all of Cohen and Cohen's stuff was always outstanding condition. And that's the way it is with most top dealers. The thing they really want to get, they want to present to their customers things in beautiful condition, beautiful original condition. That's the holy grail, of course. And then you had this set of parrot vases, garniture set. This is a famous thing. I think the Hudroff collection had some of these. Maybe these are from the Hudroff collection. I'm not sure. Oh, it is from the Hudroff, right? The Hudroff collection. Okay, I think they were on the cover of a book about their collection, and here they were. And these did very well. I think they were estimated at $15,000 to $20,000. They ended up selling for $31,875. They removed the estimate, so I can't refer to them when I'm doing this. Unfortunately, I wish they didn't do that. I do believe we talked about this one a couple of weeks ago when we were previewing the sale. Was this really, really fine, massive basin charger? It is 20. This thing is 24 inches diameter, and you see pieces that big, not too infrequently from Japan in Amari wares, but you don't see it very often in 18th century Chinese export. And the decoration on this, though, was absolutely superb. It was pretty much a flawless piece, except for one little bit of kiln grit or something right there. You can barely see it there. Little bit of kiln grit fell on it right there. And that was the only flaw on the whole face of this dish. Otherwise, this is absolutely the best blue and white decoration you could get. And this even exceeds what you see in imperial blue and white. For the Chinese stuff that was made at the imperial kilns. This is really fine stuff, and relative to value, it's a bargain. It sold for $10,837. All right, and if this was styled a little bit differently and had a Chinlung rain mark on the back of it, it would have brought way into six figures, and that's the difference between Chinese export as far as value goes and imperial wares. It's not necessarily about the quality. It's about who the pieces were made for, and things that were made today, things that were made for the Chinese market, things that were done in the Chinese taste are more valuable for the time being than export wares. But I get a feeling that's going to change over time. And then there was this really fine set of Kangxi garniture, this Kangxi garniture set. Very, very pretty, beautifully painted, all in good shape, and all 5 pieces. And there was a single of these without the lid that was somewhere recently in a sale that we covered, and just the single went for about I think $1,500 or $1,800. And here you have the complete garniture with all of its lids, 5 pieces, and it sold for $24,225. And these were very, very attractive. These aren't enormous; they were 9 inches tall, but top quality. And when you can get multiples, whenever you have multiples, like I've said many, many times, if a single vase is worth $2,000, a pair is usually worth 2.5 to 3 times that. And so when you get 5. It becomes exponential. The prices rise radically and heavily. And then there was this very nice Beijing enamel European scene lobed tray, 18th century. Again, in beautiful condition, wonderful artwork, no wear. Okay, just absolutely great. I don't know what the condition. I assume the back is probably in pretty good shape. Yeah, there's the back of it. With a full landscape on it, which is quite unusual. Often the backs of these, as many of you know, if you've bought these before, will recognize this is interesting with a landscape because often they're left blank. It's just a solid color. And here they decorated it front and back. There's the Cohen label. Apparently it was originally at Blewett's, another great London dealer for many, many years. And it ended up selling for $17,850. It was 11 inches in diameter. And here is that very rare pair of Pronk Famille Rose and yellow ground vases. We talked about this the other day because these are sort of iconic pieces. Again, I think maybe from the Woodruff collection also, but very, very fine. That lovely, slightly green yellow ground with these floating flowers and so forth on it. Just very, very pretty. And they ended up selling for $8,287, which I think was a pretty good buy. They were 12 inches tall. I think that was a very reasonable buy. I think that was one of the better buys of the sale. $4,000 a piece for those Qianlong era, early in the period. They said they're Pronk style because they dated them to 1740, and what that means is that the design was based on a design by Pronk, who was working for a short time in the 1730s. 1737, 1738. He designed porcelain only for a couple of years, a year and a half, and the stuff was so expensive that it was very difficult to sell. I've mentioned that before. That one of his pieces in the day cost a nice piece by him, decorated by him and sold in Holland, could cost as much as a house back in those days. And then you have another set of these Qianlong jars. These are from 1750. They sold for $38,000. Very, very beautiful. Wonderful birds and blossoming flowers, and again in perfect condition. Very attractive lower borders and so forth. And these were a little smaller. These were 18 inches tall, but absolutely beautiful. And they brought a little bit more than the larger pair from before. But both of them, I don't see the difference in quality. I think it was just a matter of a group of people were bidding on one, and that was their taste, and another group were bidding on these, and that's their taste, and so that you have a little bit of price difference there, $10,000 or so, but very attractive vase. And then these did fantastically well, and these were not especially large. These jars were just 12 inches tall, and they ended up selling for $25,500. All right, that's a good sign right there. And the pattern on these were done around 1770, 1775 or so. It's a well-known type. These are the finest of the type, though. These are the really, really fine examples. And if you compare it to other porcelains from this time with this scene, this is a well-known scene. It's like a stock pattern that they were fond of using with the figures and the buildings and the courtyards and the mountains and all that stuff. You see it on a lot of Chinese export wares. But this particular type of pattern is the best of the best of the best. So that had a lot to do with the prices realized. If it was in the more standard off the shelf version of this scene that is on these plates, on these jars rather, the price probably would have been around $6,000 or $7,000. But the artwork on this was head and shoulders above the typical pieces, and they sold for $25,500. That's a very strong price, but a good sign. It's on a good sign. I can already see this on somebody's George III sideboard or George III table or federal sideboard or something. So that's a good thing. And then this was an interesting thing, and I had got a couple of inquiries about it because somebody wrote and they said, "Isn't that Delft?" And it isn't. During the 18th century, during the Kangxi period, when trade was going on between them, they actually occasionally would send a Delft plate to China and have it replicated in porcelain. And that's what this is. It was the river, the design river was going that way, like Cornelius Pronk was sent designs over. Before him, in the Kangxi period, Dutch traders would send over a piece of Dutch Delft and ask the Chinese kilns to make some in blue and white by copying it. So this is why, if you look at it, you're saying, "Boy, that looks just like Delft." Well, it's supposed to look like Delft. It's the pattern that they were drawing from. And then over here was that very attractive 18th century gilded sacrificial blue bowl. I thought this was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And I think this was also one of the best buys of the day. This thing, it was in beautiful condition. You don't see any wear on it. The blue glaze was rich, sapphire blue. There's the interior of it with the red and gold outlining and so forth. The bowl was, I think, 12 inches in diameter. No, it was 14 inches, 13 3/4 inches, bigger than I thought. Sold for just $5,100. which I think was a great buy. That's an absolutely gorgeous bowl, given its condition. We've seen ones similar to it. We talked about it before, where the gilding is rubbed off and they still bring $3,000-4,000. And in that case, it was in pristine condition, as all this stuff was, and it did not an enormous price. I mean, if it had sold for $10,000, I wouldn't have been the least bit surprised. So somebody got a very good buy on that. And then you have this is a wonderful interior scene. I want to see if this is a charger. I think it is. Yeah, it is a charger. It was 18 inches in diameter. Really, really nice Yongchen period. Probably done in the around 1730s, 1734, 35, sort of toward the end of the period, and meticulously painted, beautiful interior in Cavetto with clouds and so forth, and then you have this rim with these repeat patterns, and then cartouches with figures in them, vibrant colors, nowhere anywhere on this, absolutely none, and. It did very well. It brought $21,000. I think it was estimated at 15 to 20, so it was right above the range. And then there was on to this, the elephant trunk handled tankard. This was actually on the cover of one of their catalogs, as I recall. It was a very rare tankard, extremely rare, with a lid. Beautifully done, beautiful decoration with the cockerels on it and so forth. And this cockerel pattern, of course, was popular on dinnerwares as well. But here it was on this Qianlong period, early Qianlong period, right after the Yongchen era ended. Ended up selling for $11,475. That was, I believe, over the estimate or within the estimate, very close to it. And this really great Meissen-style oval terrain cover, Qianlong period, around 1760. But again, look at the condition of this thing. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. There's a slight area of fading down here at the bottom. That may have been from the kiln. And but look at the plate. Look at the vibrancy of it. There's still a shine on it, for heaven's sakes. And that looks about as good as they could possibly look. Like the day they were made, okay, and this is sort of the hallmark of Cohen & Cohen's reputation. This is what they sold, and I think this also was a very good buy. Somebody bought the tray and the tureen for $1,785, and this was a good size one. It's 15 inches. The tray was 15 inches long. The plate on the bottom, so this was a good size setup. And again, we get back to this is the kind of thing that a lot of you collect and can enjoy and can afford. And here it is at $1,700. And we've seen many pieces sell over the years that are nowhere near as beautiful as this for more money than this. You can buy at these auction houses at Bonham's, Christie's, and Sotheby's. You can buy there and get some very nice buys. This was another thing I thought that was a very nice buy, was this export version of a monk's cap ewer. Which go back, into the Ming Dynasty when this form first was used. It was Kangxi period, made around 1710. Wonderfully enameled, beautifully done, very complicated piece to pot. Love the top of it and so forth. Just a great little example. And it ended up selling for $2,805. A wonderful buy, and this is it's a real rarity in the export world. And I think part of the reason is sometimes is that when you have something that you can't look up readily and see what another one is sold for as your guide, they're difficult to estimate because you don't know what's going to happen. And in this case, it ended up selling for $2,805, which was a very, very good deal. And then the puce decorated sailing ship. True trying to trade stuff. Here you are with the ship on it. Had a little bit of wear at the bottom. This puce material, this puce enamel was very prone to chipping and wear. Because you'll notice that the gilding is still in good shape, but the puce is worn. And that shows you, I don't know if it's soft or what it is, but every time you see a puce plate, puce-colored plate, often they're worn, and it may be my imagination, but that's the way it seems, because right next to all this wear here, you have the gilding, which is totally intact, and gilding just rests on the surface. It gets very little abrasion against it in a typical situation, and this ended up selling for $6,375, but a very, very rare type with has an eel cartouche around it. So there you are. And that was sort of how the whole sale went. Everything did fine. I think the Cohen and Cohen should be very happy with themselves. Bonhams did a good job with this. Bonhams did a great job with this. And there you are. And we'll see how the rest of the sales go. And there are going to be a series of auctions in March coming up. And there's a number of things over on the global pages right now. The Hyde Park auctions, part 1 and 2, have a lot of good Chinese export in them. I went over them on the weekly video already this week for the global member page. And just a heads up to everybody, if you get over to Sotheby's and take a look at the Hyde Park sales, they have a huge amount of Chinese export ware that is unreserved, completely unreserved, and they're starting the bidding at $1 in some pieces, I think, or $5 or something, some crazy thing. And some very fine examples. And the results from the Cohen and Cohen sale should encourage some very good prices over there as well. So we'll keep an eye on it. All right. So that's it. I'll be back tomorrow with the regular weekly video, but I wanted to get this out because we talked about it a number of times over the last couple of weeks, in particular the Cohen and Cohen sale, and I was very pleased to see how well it did. Bravo. And we go on from here. There we are. All right. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do. We do these once, twice a week. Usually we do a couple a week, I guess, at this point. And we look forward to having you if you want to subscribe. Okay. Bye-bye.